Chapter 1. Well, that turned to shit, Jordan thought, as he struck the nail for the last time, and the timber split the length of the paling. He pulled the pine length off and discarded it. This resembled Jordan's life in this rural outback town. For him, he was the nail and life was the hammer. He looked down the boundary line and mused at why he was fixing such a dilapidated structure. How much more could he take, he thought, as he nailed another paling to the fence. The separation was ugly, and he'd played his own part in that. There was an upside, though. He still had access to the kids. They were his priority these days. It still didn't take away that he spent 10 years in a toxic circle of fighting with Amelia and falling into depression. He hated being miserable, yet it followed him around like a rabid dog in a Stephen King novel. The childhood trauma was bad enough. The physical and mental scars he carried were testament to that. This led to outbursts of anger. But Jordan thought that better than facing a look into the past. He saw trauma as a thing to forget, wall out, banish. Easier to push on and forget that crap. The fence was now fixed. It was a band-aid fix to a cut jugular, but it would hold the old stumpy dog in. This also resembled himself. He was living just for the sake of living. Debts were piling and dreams were vanishing, yet he was plugging along, sitting on his hands as the hits kept stacking. He knew something ought to change, but where should he start? That was a question for later. Now was a time for rest. He looked at his belly, considering it. Yep, got to work on that too, he thought. Dinner wasn't much that night as he sat at the table and pretended to listen to the nightly news. Half of what they said these days made no sense or was politically driven. Jordan hated politics. To him, it was all a sham. Left, right, up, down, who cared? Too many dreams to ignore, too much not to care about. Politics were not a thought for Jordan. He needed drive, he thought. Something to throw himself at. Something that made him meaningful. He knew this little Queensland town was not going to answer the call. It was time for sleep. Time to reflect and decide how to turn this miserable existence into the resemblance of a life. He slumped into bed, exhausted after the first day of physical labour he'd performed since the divorce 6 weeks ago. He knew once he closed his eyes, he'd be dead to the world for the night. Maybe that's what he needed, a good rest and a clear mind. He lay awake a few more moments, with his thoughts and emotions running through his head like a circus sideshow, before drifting off as the last thought reverberated through his head. Where do I start? How do I fix this broken mind?